Good afternoon, and welcome to the Sheen Center Online. I'm David DeSerto, Interim Executive Director of the Sheen Center, an initiative of the Archdiocese of New York, and this is our continuing Faith, Hope, and Love streaming weekly series, which we're offering free to the public online while we're unable to gather together in person down at the Sheen Center. Today, we are doubly thankful first, for our friends at Mastermedia, especially Jonathan Graham, East Coast Vice President for Mastermedia International, who will be serving as our moderator. And second, for today's very special guest, Lewis Henry Mitchell, who Jonathan will introduce in a few seconds. Now, for generations of children and quite a number of adults, the question, can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street, has been about more than asking directions. It is an inquiry of the heart. Sesame Street is not just a destination, but it's an aspiration, an idea of community built around love and kindness. And those two words certainly come to mind when thinking about our guest today, Lewis Henry Mitchell. So to introduce Lewis, let's bring on our good friend, Jonathan Graham.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure and honor to co-host this event with you and my friends at the Sheen Center. Some of you may not be familiar with my company, Mastermedia International. If that's the case, I encourage you to check out our website, mastermedia.com, and we'd love to be in touch. But to the business at hand, I want to introduce my dear friend, Lewis Henry Mitchell. Lewis is the creative director of character design at Sesame Workshop. In that role, he directs and oversees all aspects of character art for Sesame Workshop, the nonprofit organization behind Sesame Street. From designing the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade balloons and floats to directing Sesame Street Muppet photo shoots, Mitchell has been at Sesame Workshop for 20 years and freelance there since 1992, in fact. He is the chief Sesame Street Muppet designer, and most recently, Lewis designed the character Julia, the first Sesame Street character on the autism spectrum. Before Sesame Workshop, he began his artistic career at 17 years old, working for Neil Adams, one of the top comic book and sequential artists in the world at the time. Mitchell continued his career through illustrating children's books, designing characters and toys, as well as teaching and lecturing internationally. He attended the School of Visual Arts and the Arts Students League. He resides in Rego Park, Queens with his wife, Yvonne. What a gift it is to welcome you today, Lewis.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a very nice introduction.
Well,
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's an honor. It's an honor to be your friend. It's an honor to introduce you to so many that haven't had the chance to sit down the numerous times I have with you. So we're going to start pretty much from the beginning for you. And we talk about this being the journey to Sesame Street. And every journey has to have a beginning. Tell us about your passion for art, Jim Henson's work, and who encouraged you to keep pursuing your journey.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I like to use the word enthusiasm. If you go and look up the actual word, over more so than passion, enthusiasm actually means endowed with the Spirit of God, where passion means, you're just very passionate about things and you're very excited about them. Excuse me, just have to adjust this. Thank you. But anyway, I'm going to actually start with Jim Henson because that's really where it all began. Back when I was a little boy, mid-60s, I was watching a show called The Ed Sullivan Show. Now, a lot of people out there probably don't know what The Ed Sullivan Show is, but I think most do. And Ed Sullivan had an entertainment show. It was a variety show. Lots of different people came on. The Beatles were introduced to America there. The Rolling Stones were on, a lot of different people. But I didn't care about any of those people. What I cared about was a little mouse named Topo Gigio. But then, even more so, were the Muppets. Whenever Ed Sullivan would go and say, here comes the Muppets, however he said it, I would stop everything I was doing. I'd be playing in the corner, or even at my mom's knee, just kind of play with my toys or my own puppets. As soon as I heard that Sullivan announced the Muppets, I would drop everything and run to the TV set and sit there or kneel in front of it because I wasn't sitting. I was really enthusiastic about it, not knowing what was happening. Something was actually being, God was using that to stir something up in me because I was so enamored with them. So, and the thing is, they were just lip syncing off of music. It wasn't anything in particular that was that special. And it was a black and white television set, if you can believe it or not. So it was just something that was coming out, something that was drawing me in even more so. So anyway, as I went about, watching, TV, looking for him, even on the Jimmy Dean show, Ralph, the first Muppet that made his appearance on TV in a big way was Ralph the dog. And I knew that was something I loved. I didn't know anything about what Muppets were outside of what Ed Sullivan said. So anyway, as I'm following along and watching every time they came on, I noticed there's this special show that came on called Sesame Street. Now, and I watched the very first episode. I had no idea what it was whatsoever. I just saw the claymation at the beginning of the intro, and I love claymation, animation done with clay. So as I'm watching that, I see people of color on there, which was really unique back then. But then I see this big, weird-looking bird, and then later I see this orange creature come out of the garbage can, and and I said, well, that kind of looks like those puppets that were on the Ed Sullivan Show. I wonder if that's the same guy. But yeah, I just kept watching, and then later on, maybe the next year, I saw something called the Muppets on Puppets, and this was Jim Henson. Now, Jim Henson is what he was, one of the most generous artists I've ever seen, because even before Sesame Street was a really big hit, he had already produced a show called the Muppets on Puppets, and it showed everything. He was giving all of his secrets away. And I'm drooling, I'm watching this, and I said, that's the guy, that's the man that I saw on Ed Sullivan. Because when he came out, he would always shake Ed Sullivan's hand after the Muppet skit. But I didn't care about him because I didn't know who that was. But now I knew who he was. And I went looking for everything, but I didn't have to look very far because, again, he was so generous. I mean, that show was about 90 minutes long, I think. And it went by very quickly, but I was even taking notes and just, absorbing anything and everything that I could. Again, not knowing that I was going to end up contributing to the legacy of this man and helping to continue his work on Sesame Street. So that kind of in a nutshell is how I got to Sesame Street. I won't sing the song. I'm just explain it to you.
Oh, why not? You and I can do a duet, and everyone would leave this chat right away.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you're much better than me. For those that don't know, another side car we could take is Lewis is a composer, hence the keyboard behind him, and
that's different from singing, Jonathan. Trust me.
True. But I got as much talent in both, so it's not happening. But so here you are watching the Ed Sullivan Show, which then became famous for other generations, whether it was David Letterman or where Colbert is now and on Broadway in New York City. And you had this thing form in you when you were a young child, which then you helped with the legacy of now, even entering its 52nd season, getting ready to start.
51. Oh, they're going to tape it. Yeah, you're right.
So
very good, Jonathan. I'm really impressed that you understand the schedule like that.
Well, thank you. I know some inside people that So then you have this passion to get involved in something like this. Talk a little further about what you did next with that passion.
Okay, enthusiasm. I'm kidding. Passion's a good word. So what I did was I just kept going through school, and I continued to draw. And my mom was like one of my heroes, and she would buy me art supplies and things like that. So I just kept trying to draw and practice. I discovered this man named Norman Rockwell, who became one of my greatest heroes. Norman Rockwell and Jim Henson are the two keys to what I do. But then when I got into art school, I decided, maybe I might be able to get a job working for Jim Henson, maybe even on Sesame Street. I know they must use artists. So again, I wasn't sure how to go about doing that, but I kept trying. I kept working, kept trying to get as good as I could possibly get. And I still, aspire toward that. I still learn. I still go to the Art Students League when it reopens. But yes, I continue to study and work and draw. And then one day I said, no, I think I really want to go there. So I decided to ask my teacher. Now, he was my hero teacher. I don't like to say his name, but he was my hero teacher. And he loved my work so much. And I figured, maybe I can share with him what my dream is, and maybe he can help me find a way to get there, or meet the right people, something. So I told him what I wanted to do, which was I want to work for Jim Henson, and I want to work for him on Sesame Street. Jim Henson was still alive, back then. And he says, "Oh, Louis, you're aiming way too high, man. You're never going to get a job like that. I mean, you should. I believe in you, but you should aim lower so that you can achieve these goals. But Sesame Street, I mean, come on, you're really, reaching way up." And the thing is that he was my hero teacher, so I was really heartbroken. I was just crushed, and I ate up every word he said. So, well, I guess there goes that dream. But now back to my mom. So I went home, and I was kind of moping around the house, and my mother did not allow that because she knew she gave us, my sisters and I, a beautiful home, wonderful home. There she is. That's when she graduated from nursing school. And she said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Well, Mom, because I told her everything." I said, "Mom, that dream I had about working for that man that does those puppets. Well, my teacher said I'm not going to get that job, so I'm just kind of feeling bad because I was hoping that maybe he would help me to find a way to do that." So she says, "Well, tell me something. Does he work for them?" I said, "Well, no." I said, "Well, why are you listening to him? He doesn't even work there. If they don't want you, let them tell you that they don't want you. But don't listen to somebody who doesn't even work there." I mean, she get really frustrated with me, but she was so sweet. And it made sense to me, but at the same time, I was still so crushed by what the teacher said. That's why I try to encourage teachers, and I'm a teacher myself. Please, we don't know what other people are capable of. We don't even know what we're capable of. We go back inside and try to draw what God has placed in there. There's so much that we're capable of, but many people just kind of drift away. But, I was about to drift away myself until my mother came to my rescue. And it's because she had the same experience when she was a little girl at 8 years old. She wanted to become a nurse. And later on in life, she faced all kinds of, she went to nursing school, like you saw in that picture. That was graduation day. That was a landmark day in her life and in my life, because she was facing racism and sexism and all kinds of things back then. And she almost gave up. And she told her mother she wanted to give up. And her mother, it's my grandmother, she said, you can give up if you want to, but a lot of people have made it. There's no reason why you can't. That's how my mother needed to hear it. The way I needed to hear it was, if he doesn't work there, why are you listening to him? So she knew exactly how. I mean, again, God knows exactly how to speak to us through the people that are the most important to us. And who's more important than my mom, other than God himself? At the time, that was my source. And I'm so glad he did use her. He gave me the perfect mom to be able to escort me, even if it wasn't physically, to escort me into the dream that God planted in my heart. He says he gives us the desires of our heart. Well, he placed a desire in my heart for Sesame Street, not so much just Sesame Street, but to work in children's media. Once again, that wasn't even invented back when I was a kid. But certainly, that's what drew me forward, and my mother was the ultimate inspiration, as God used her to encourage me to keep going. It took me a while, though. It took a couple of years, but I finally said, babe, I think she's right. I'm going to go ahead and try it. So I went ahead, put together a portfolio the best I could, and submitted it to the Jim Henson Company. And I got back nice notes saying, nice work, but we don't have anything ready for you right now. And I said, okay, well, I'll try again, maybe next month. I tried again, got the same kind of letter. The third time I went, I did the same thing, but I was starting to feel a little weird because I hope that teacher wasn't right. I mean, gee, this means a lot to me. They keep saying my work is great, but they don't have anything for me. I don't understand that. I met this, now I'll say her name, a woman named Jennifer Lupinacci. She was the receptionist at the Jim Henson Company. And she said, Louis, your work is so great. Let me see who I can think of to give it to. And she became my cheerleader. And, I kept going. After a while, I was going every couple of weeks, then every 2 weeks. 8 months in. It's me 8 months. That last day, by then I was married, had a child, and I went to bring my son to school, and I had my portfolio in the special package. And I had in my heart already decided I'm going to go back to the Jim Henson Company. If they don't give me some good news today, that teacher was right, and I'm not going to keep pursuing this because it was breaking my heart to get rejected. So not so much a rejection, but it's like, yeah, we love your work, but we have nothing for you. So I said, if it happens again today, then I know that's my sign. He was right. So I took my son to school, went into Manhattan, dropped off my portfolio, and I told the young lady, Jennifer, I said, no, Jennifer, he's been wonderful, but I just can't take this rejection anymore. Again, it's not rejection, but they're saying nice things, so why didn't it turn into some kind of work for me? She said, Louis, please don't give up. I said, no, honestly, I just can't keep doing this. This is 8 months in. So I dropped the portfolio off, and then I went back, and I spent some time in Prospect Park, which is where we live near, and it was near where my son's school was. Then I went to pick up my son, came back home, and I noticed that the machine had, the light was blinking. That, back then they were answering machines. So I said, well, it's probably not them, but let me listen. I clicked the machine, and there's this man, and he's a wonderful, wonderful. His name is James Mann. Soft-spoken voice, but a powerhouse of an artist and a teacher. And he says on the message, "Hi, Louis, this is Jim Mann. I just got the portfolio. I hadn't seen it before, but I really like what you're doing. I'd like to get you started on the project. You can call me back, and we'll set up an appointment so you can come back into the studio." And again, I didn't drop the phone, but it felt like it did because I went numb. I said, "Can this be? Am I dreaming?" I didn't know what to think, what to do. So I called him up, made the appointment, and again, I was still a little wary because of all the beating up that I got. It wasn't them; it was me beating myself up because again, I was really, really young in the Lord, and I didn't understand a lot of things yet. So I just walked as best I could with the knowledge I had. But again, God knows us, and He knows the direction He's moving us. He's leading and guiding us into all truth. So I just went ahead, not even knowing that scripture, but it's still true whether I knew it or not, like everything else He says. So I just kept going. Had a wonderful meeting with this lovely man. He gave me my first project. Now, what it was a little tiny image of Ernie, from Bert and Ernie's fame, on the side of a sneaker. It was just a little teeny weeny project, but it was the greatest project that I could ever imagine getting because I was working for the Jim Henson Company and on Sesame Street, not on the show directly, but indirectly because the show gets money from all the products that are sold. So I was even helping there too. It was just a phenomenal achievement in my life. And I just thank God so much for that. He had to take me through that process to get there, but I got there and here I am.
And we are so glad that you are here. I have to say, like everybody, obviously, I grew up as a fan of Sesame Street as well, but even more so a fan of comic books. And I noticed it's not the keyboard that's catching my eye. It's the Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Neil Adams cover back there. That's me. We could do a whole nother show on Neil Adams one day.
So Neil Adams. Wow, David, we got to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have great Neil Adams stories.
Yeah. Louis, you speak so lovingly about the heroic, formative influence that your mother was on you as an artist, as a man of faith, but as a human being as well. But I remember at an earlier Sheen event several years back, you had shared a story about an encounter with another woman who left a lasting impression and impact on you, Coretta Scott King. And could you share a little bit about that story and how that also played into your journey?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Wow. So I didn't really know when I was a little boy, in the year he was assassinated. I didn't know who he was, but I was sitting again at my mom's knee playing with toys, whatever, and there's a television program. This music is playing. All of a sudden, they make an announcement. I am not paying attention at all, but my mother is, and she gasps and she starts crying. And it's very rare to see my mother crying. She was a very strong woman. Not that tears mean weakness. It's just that she just didn't display it that much. So I said, "Mommy, what's wrong? What's the matter?" She says, "Somebody just killed Martin Luther King Jr." And then she starts crying again. I said, "But who is that?" I'm thinking that is there somebody in our family? I didn't understand why she was so upset, so overwrought with grief. So it certainly, again, God used that. He didn't cause it, obviously, but he used that to put plant a seed in my mind and in my heart. So as time goes on, I'm every time I hear his name, I pay attention, because obviously I heard his name before that, but it didn't cause a mark until my mother responded to him so tremendously, and his murder. So I just kept following him. When I went to school one day, the teacher in grade school, the teacher said, "All right, I want you to pick somebody that's very popular, somebody that's famous in history, and write a little book report about them, or some kind of report letting me know how much you think about this person, or what they've done in their lives." So of course, the first person I thought of was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And my mother had got me this set of these cards, and they had different famous people on them. And one of them was about Dr. King. It was like a very abbreviated version of his life. I mean, you can't fit Dr. King's life, fit anybody's life on one card. But in this particular case, it was a nice little concise nugget that I was able to use. And I found a couple of other books and a couple of other things. And I remember I did so well. I even drew a little picture of Dr. King on the bottom of the report, not to fill the space, just because I was just so excited about it. And she loved it. She hung it up in the classroom. I think that was the first piece of art of mine that was ever hanging up anywhere. So anyway, again, this just glued me to Dr. King even more. Fast forward ahead, every year, whenever his birthday comes or the anniversary of his death came, they would do some special about him. And I always watch every single time I could. There was one particular time when I was watching, and my son was a little baby boy, a few months old actually. And I'm watching the TV. It's one of Dr. King. I think again it was probably the anniversary of his death, and they showed a lot of clips. But one clip they showed was Dr. King giving what to me is my favorite of all of his sermons, the 3 dimensions of a complete life. And I highly recommend people look that up. If you can get it on video, I think on YouTube you can find it. But it's the 3 dimensions of a complete life. And in one particular part, he was talking about doing your best, being your very best. And he said something that to this day, it's one of those riveting, ignitions that just charge me up. He starts talking about stuff. Even if you're a street sweeper, you should sweep the streets the way Michelangelo created artwork, or the way Beethoven wrote music, or the way Shakespeare wrote, poetry. So you should do your job and do it so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it any better. Now, I had never heard anything like that before. Maybe other people have, but I personally never heard anything like that before. And for it to come from him just was astounding. So I had my little boy in my arms. I said, "Mikey, did you hear that? Did you hear what Dr. King said?" And frankly, I think he did, because he turned into a wonderful human being. But beside that, I just kept following Dr. King. I became an art director at an advertising agency called McCaffrey McCall Advertising. And there's this wonderful king of an art director. He actually was the creative director. His name is Bruce Montgomery. He was actually my boss's boss, but he took me under his wing because we just hit it off so well. He became like another one of my mentors back then. I didn't even know about the word mentor, but he was definitely that for me, almost like another dad in a way, because he just looked out for me. Anyhow, I said, I want, and this is a year that Dr. King's birthday was about to become a national holiday. So I said, Dr. King means so much to me. I want to somehow get involved with this. So I put together this presentation, 2 booklets, and then 3 posters. 3 posters indicating, Dr. King, just showing him in maybe a phrase of his, and then the 2 booklets, one about the King's Center, one about his childhood. Now, the reason I wanted to focus on his childhood is because as I was watching that video of him speaking about the 3 dimensions of complete life, they start pulling the camera back a little bit, and they announced that he was actually speaking to, I believe it was a junior high school audience. I said, he's giving that level he must really believe in children tremendously. So I said, that's going to be my key. I want to reach out to all the schools in the country and present these 3 posters and these 2 booklets to them and it's to celebrate and commemorate the holiday. So I put it all together and I showed it to Bruce Montgomery, and he looked listening to me, and I was pretty shy even back then, but I was so excited about this that I was giving a real presentation to him. He says, "Lewis, that was a very good presentation, and I really love what you're doing. I'm going to send you to Atlanta so you can show this to the people at the King Center." And I wasn't quite ready for that, but I said, well, "Okay, Bruce, if you think it's that good." "No, this is very good. Yeah, they need to see this, and they need to hear it from you firsthand because of my passion and my enthusiasm." So I went ahead and I got together. The company bought me tickets and everything. It was just a one-day trip. So I get out there, and I got there really, really early. So I was able to go to they have the Ebenezer Baptist Church where Dr. King, gave his sermons. About a half a block or 2 blocks away, I can't remember which, but it was the home where he grew up in as a child. And then not too far away from there was the actual King Center. And you can see there's a big, it's a beautiful pool, and then there's a walkway up to hit the crypt where he is, where his body is. So anyhow, I went into the center, I went to the bookstore and everything. I had a good time, but then it was time to go to the meeting. So I went in and I met Dr. King's sister, which was really wonderful. Somebody from his family, that was nice. Then I met her husband, and I showed them the presentation, and they loved it. They just went on and on. And then they called more people in, and I kind of did the presentation maybe 3 different times, but I added something else new to it every time. And they loved it. They said, "Oh, Coretta's got to see this." And I said, "Oh, no, by all means, yes. I'm leaving you everything so you can show her." And no. You have to show her. And now that was really something I was not even close to being prepared for. I mean, meeting her would be, to me at the time, just like meeting Dr. King, because, everything he did was through her support, with her companionship, with her partnership, I mean, yes, she took care of the kids. She did a lot of things like that, but she was right there by his side. And it's extraordinary to me. I said, well, you know what? I think they don't really mean I'm going to actually present it to her. I'm probably going to, give it to them. And I was not making any sense of this. So I went ahead and said, well, sure, you let me know. So I was sitting in the room with myself, and I'm saying, this isn't really going to happen. There's no way. I'm not going to meet Coretta Scott King. So a young woman came in, and she said, "Mr. Mitchell, Mrs. King has a cold. Do you think you can keep your presentation to 2 minutes? And it's getting close now." I said, "Well, sure, I can keep it to 1 minute." I wanted to get out of there because I was getting more and more nervous. I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't believe this was happening. So anyway, she said, "I'll be right back." She went out, and she came back, and she said, "Come with me," escorted me down this hallway. And I'm still thinking there's going to be some big conference room. I'm going to leave everything out there, probably lay it out, and then leave because, I know she's not going to be in the conference room. And again, I'm making all this up because I don't know what to do with this kind of information. God opens doors that no man can shut, and you close the doors no man can open. But a door like this was so far beyond what I could ask or think, as he says, in the scriptures, way beyond what I could ask or think. So anyway, I follow her and I walk down the hallway, and then she turns into this big room, which I think is the conference room. And I walk in, and there she was. There was this big, beautiful desk, but there she was, Coretta Scott King herself. And even though she was sniffling a little bit, she looked absolutely beautiful. It was like this beacon. And like I said, I felt like I was meeting Dr. King himself. It felt that strong to me that's how unified they are to one another in my heart. So anyway, she looks up and she says, with kind of an attitude, to be honest with you, "All right, young man, what do you have to show me?" And I said, "Well, first of all, Mrs. King, I just want to thank you for all you've done and all your husband done, what you did together. I mean, the world owes you a gratitude, so I just want to thank you for that as part of my lead into the presentation." So she nodded her head politely, and I laid everything out and I explained it to her. I showed her everything. It was the 3 posters, the 2 booklets, and I kept it down to maybe just a little over a minute. I said, "So please, Mrs. King, you can keep these resources and you can look them over, and then you can contact me, or your assistant can contact me and let me know what you feel about it." And she says, "Wait a minute." I was getting up. She said, "Well, no, young man, you sit down. I want to hear more about this." So I look up at her assistant, and her assistant goes like this, like, "What are you going to?" She's going to say no. So I went in. I kept talking, And she was asking questions about me. It was really a beautiful exchange. And again, I was in awe, but again, because this was a door that God had opened, he equipped me, he prepared me, he used me, he was speaking through me in order to be able to present this in a proper way, because I don't feel like I was even there. I thought it wasn't a dream. But his faithfulness is so enormous that he knows each and every one of us. He knew what to do with me and how to get me through this situation. So anyhow, at that point, I remember toward the end of my presentation, her assistant left the room. So I said, "So, Mrs. King, I'm really happy that I had a chance to present this to you." And she says, back to the attitude, she says, "No, this is really wonderful. Right, but how much is it going to cost me now?" I said, "Oh, Mrs. King, you don't understand. The agency that I work for, we have our own printing plants. We have our own ability to distribute this information. The agency is going to take care of everything. All we're looking for is your blessing to do this. If you feel that it's, if it comes even close to a vision that you think can represent Dr. King's holiday, we would love to do." She said, "Wait a minute, young man, you mean to tell me that all you came here to ask me for was my blessing?" And I said, and again, this was God that gave it to me. I said, "Well, Mrs. King, with everything you and Dr. King already did for everyone in the world, it's time to start giving back. What more can we ask of you?" She calls her assistant back in and she says, "You give this young man anything he needs." Which again, I couldn't believe my ears. So anyway, the assistant smiled at me and she left again. And then this is probably the greatest of all affirmations I ever got in my entire career. She looked at the drawings, and I had illustrated each one of them. And there weren't photographs, there were drawings. I found these beautiful pictures of Dr. King. They weren't very good quality photographs, but I was able to use, again, the gift that God gave me to enhance the photographs and to give a really nice image of Dr. King in all three of these posters. She looked me in the eye. After she did a good look at the images, she said, "Young man, these are the greatest drawings of my husband I've ever seen." I get choked up every time I say this because I don't know how to describe that level of not just affirmation, but she said it so tenderly. She had been speaking with much authority because she was again, the CEO, the leader of the entire organization. But it became not a whisper, but the most gentle, sweetest, most sincere voice. "Young man, these are the greatest drawings of my husband that I've ever seen." Just meant the world to me, and I didn't know really what to do with myself anymore. All I had to do was say thank you. So anyhow, she said, "Look, you'll get everything you need. I'll give you my blessings. I'll give it to you in writing." And so she called someone else in and said, "I want you to make sure you give this young man anything he needs." So I was able to work with this gentleman for a little while. The story kind of takes a different trail there, and the thing is, I already gave it so much time, but ultimately, I know what that whole trip meant because I couldn't believe it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, the way I believed it could go. So for years, I'm thinking, well, Father God, why did you bring me that close to meeting Coretta Scott King and basically meeting Dr. King too in one person? Why did that happen? And it took years, but I finally recognized, artists are very sensitive people. I mean, lots of different people are sensitive, but artists have a particular sensitivity because we want to do our best. Sometimes it's difficult to share what we're doing with other people, no matter what kind of art you do, even if it's dancing. Some people they're doing their best, but they're doing it privately because you don't want to show anyone work that's not your best. So we're very, very shy, and it just took me a while to put everything together and to really thank her well enough in a way to express what I felt deeply, even to the agency, to everybody. It just didn't go, but God put on my heart, and it was very meaningful to me that I needed that validation. Artists need validation, but to get a validation of that caliber, on that level, if anyone else in the organization told me that, it would have been fine. But it came right out of her own mouth while she looked me right in my eyes. And again, I just thank God for that awesome revelation, confirmation, gift. It was one of the greatest moments of my entire life. There are only a couple of other times in my life. Probably the most important time in my life was when I met Jesus Christ. When I came into the family of God, that's what was the greatest day of my life. But this wasn't too far back from that.
Hey,
So thanks for listening to that entire story. You asked, David.
It was a wonderful story. Thank you for telling it.
hey man, what a great! Thank you for sharing that, Lewis. And again, I've had the gift of hearing a lot of this and hearing it again, and the impact that that had on you as an artist, to accept that and go, hey, what a gift from God to hear that from Coretta Scott King, and the affirmation that it was. And it might have taken a little bit of time, but it came, and that's what's beautiful in terms of you receiving that. And you, I will affirm that you do great work, but I'm not an artist, but I've gotten
Yes,
to
you
see.
are.
Well, we all are artists. Okay, that's the teacher in Lewis.
I'll tell you why in a minute if you give me an opportunity.
Okay, here's your opportunity. So one of the coolest things that I've gotten the opportunity to do is to be with you in your place of work. One of your jobs is direct photo shoots, and people have asked you this. I've asked you this, so I'm going to give it to the broader audience to allow them to hear. When you're doing these photo shoots, what's the process that you go through to go, I'm going to do the, I have to make this character look like something. How do I do that?
Very good question, Jonathan. And I know you've heard it many times before, but I think you'll get a kick out of it this time again. So the whole idea is that when I do a photo shoot or when I'm drawing the characters, either way, I kind of vanish and actually kind of become them. I know them so well, so intimately, because I really love them. They're my friends. They put them characters, Muppets, or, sometimes people call them properties when we're in the office. But they're my buddies. They're my friends. And I know them intimately, especially Cookie Monster. If I have an opportunity, I'll tell you why he's my favorite character of all time ever. But so I go in there, and of course, every morning I always pray, but I pray before photo shoots. I pray before any kind of projects that's going to really, I'm always in a prayerful mood. Like I said, I pray first thing in the morning, do my Bible study in the morning. And then right before a photo shoot, when I pray, though, I don't pray, oh, Father, please help me. I know he's already said he blessed me with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. So that means all blessings, including the directed photo shoot, which I go in there and actually pose the characters. When I was a kid playing with Gumby, didn't realize that was my practice for this kind of a thing. They all have armature wires inside of them. So the whole thing is that I have to become them. And I was just going to say something. I kind of lost my train of thought there. But anyway, so when I go into the studio, like I said, I vanish completely, and I make sure that each one of the characters does what they are supposed to do and doesn't do what they're not supposed to do. That's one of the key elements of being a character artist, but especially the creative director, because a lot of times I'll see lots of different artists, even people that I train, do things that are not quite right. So anyhow, after my time of prayer, this is not going to say that. My prayer is not, please help me, Father, because I know the help's there. The blessing's already there. What I say is, Father, I'm so excited about what you're going to do here. So I thank you for it in advance, in Jesus' name. And then I go in there with total confidence, absolute total confidence that he's going to do it all through me. So I go in there and I just release myself. You have a good time. Jonathan, you've been there to many photo shoots, so we have a really, really great time. And I get to work with the photographer that Jim Henson handpicked to be the Muppet photographer. His name is John Barrett. He's a dear friend of mine, really talented. He's been working on these. He is actually retired, but whenever I need a photo shoot done, I always call him up and I ask, John, I know you're retired. And he says, what do you mean I'm retired? Now, I don't get to tell him he's retired because he always comes back to the studio to do photo shoots. So was that a good answer to your question, Jonathan? I'm trying to keep things.
I love hearing it. I love hearing you share, because so many people wonder, how do you go about it? How do artists go about different things? And I think hearing from somebody that's been doing it for so long and is so talented at it, and there's an art form to it that you could take hours to explain, that again is a special gift that you have. So I thank you for sharing that. I'm going to toss it to David for another question.
Sure. It's just so inspiring listening to you, and even your off the cuff comment to Jonathan about him being an artist, about everybody being an artist. It reminds me, there's a line in Pope John Paul II's letter to artists, and he's communicating to artists, and he says the real key for artists is to make your life a masterpiece. That's the ultimate canvas, and you embody that so well in everything that you say.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
The Sheen Center's had the privilege of hosting you a few times on our stages, and one of them was several years back. We had been involved with a stage production that revolved around several stories dealing with individuals on the autism spectrum, and you were gracious enough to participate in a panel afterwards talking about the intersection of the spectrum and creativity, and you were gracious enough to bring along your friend Julia, and it was so wonderful. Julia obviously is the first Sesame Street character who is on the spectrum, and you played an intimate role in the development and the creation of that character. Can you share a little bit about that story?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love talking about this. So Sesame Workshop had been working on the Autism Initiative for many years. I had no idea what they were doing. But a good friend of mine who worked with families in the communities and actually in the school, she said, "You know what, Louis, you'd be great to come in and sit in and work with the kids." And so I wouldn't know what to do. I'm not trained for that. I mean, what I do, I might throw off so many months or even years of work that they've done to get stronger. Just come in and love them. With that, I love kids, so I went in there. And of course, immediately, two of the kids in there I just completely connected with. One in particular, this little girl that just, she was so sweet. The last day of my I volunteered there for a while. And the last day of my volunteer work, I actually was the only man, I think, that showed up that day. Or at least I was one of the few. So they wanted me to wait in back of the line as the kids went outside because they had this trailer in the back for the kids to do like envelope stuffing and things like that. So again, all the children on the spectrum. So I said, all right, sure. So I stayed back, and this young little girl that I worked with, she passed me by, but then she stops. And I'm saying, oh, why she stop? And she turned around, she come back to get me because I was waiting by the door. She took my hand. What I believe is she thought I was lost. So she took my hand and took me around the back where the trailers were, where they were doing the envelope stuffing and constructing pins. I was already in love with her, but that just melted my heart all the more. So anyway, this just meant so much to me because I got to work with the kids in the classroom at their homes. My friend took me to their homes because she's directly involved working with the children and their families for years and years and years. And I mean, she had a real instinct for what I'm doing, what I was doing for the kids, and she could see how I could help them even more. So she took me to their homes, and worked with their parents. It was really, really wonderful to me. I got to know the parents. I got to see the joys, but also the extreme hardships in some cases. So anyway, one day I'm at Sesame Workshop, and I wasn't even thinking about that because it's been a while since I've been involved. So I get a call saying, Louis, we've been working on an autism initiative for a long time. I think it was Dr. Jeanette Betancourt. She's one of the, I believe, senior vice presidents or one of the vice presidents of the company. And she was in charge of this initiative. Then she says, Louis, we're doing this autism initiative, and we need a character that's going to be, someone that could be seen with Elmo and could be seen with Abby Cadabby and different characters. Now, it's not a puppet, but it's a character that's going to be illustrated for books, so we can send out, the message to different people and start to reach out to the communities from Sesame Street about autism and helping people understand. It was called Be Amazing. So anyway, I said, I can't believe this. Now I know. See, again, God opened the door. I had no idea. He knows the end from the beginning. He planted that seed a long time ago. I had no idea this was going to come up. And of course, they come to me. I wasn't the only artist that was involved. I mean, a couple of other people at the time. I think at that time I was the director of special projects. But I did do a lot of drawing and character art and things like that. But they came to me and asked me if I would take this on. I said, of course I will. And I said, this is now I know why God brought me here. So I did the book. I didn't illustrate the book. I authored the book. I designed the character. I designed Julia. It took a couple of tries, but only about 3 tries I was able to get her. And the first drawing I did was the one I liked the best. But you know, whenever you do a presentation, you got to have at least 3 variations so people have an opportunity to pick. So I went ahead and I did the 3 drawings, but I really love my first one. And the thing about it is Julia doesn't like this is the way they created her, you know, again, because you know everybody heard if you've met one person on the autism spectrum, you only met one. So in her particular case, she didn't like to wear like bows in her hair or bracelets, so I had to take those off of the sketch I did. But certainly, you know, and of course that was the one that they picked, which I was so happy about it. So I went in and art directed another illustrator because we can't do all the work that comes through Sesame Street. So it was a book that I did a lot of layouts and things like that, and the illustrator went ahead and followed some of my layouts, my art direction, and used the character design that I created to draw Julia with Elmo and Abby. And it was just wonderful. And the community ate it up. They loved it. It was so helpful to them. And we got back reports about how amazing it was and how helpful it was to get people who never really understood or who looked down on some people on the spectrum. It just brought this wonderful attention to it. And I was so very happy. It was so successful that the person in charge of creativity, the person in charge of creativity at Sesame said, you know what, I think we need to put her on the show. Now, I didn't like that idea at first because, you know, it's one thing if you talk about Julia's behaviors and you look at a book and it tells you, you know, that she's having one of her behaviors because she's upset. But that could be interpreted any way. Everybody out there who has children on the spectrum and there's a behavior associated with them, they can automatically interpret it through that. But if I have if there's a puppet on the show, how can I represent all of the different behaviors there are? You know, I don't want to isolate or leave anybody out. And again, I'm not the performer, but I do know that, you know, everyone is different. So I said, you know, we can't get behind this idea of having a puppet on the show. But then he said, well, no, but I said, because we can't represent the entire spectrum. They said, no, we're not representing the spectrum. We're pointing to it. We're bringing attention to autism. I said, oh my gosh, now that I can get behind very, very easily with tremendous enthusiasm. So I did the sketches and I did what's called model turns. I drew her from the character I designed for the books. I drew her as a puppet, as a 3D drawing. Now, it wasn't really 3D, it was 2D, but I know how to draw it and make it look dimensional and give it what's called kind of like a wireframe, you know, just guidelines so that the people of the Jim Henson Company, which specifically Riley Cruson, who was like the master Muppet builder at Jim Henson Company in New York, so she could have as much support and help as she needed to replicate the character that I drew. So I went in and did that and came back and I saw the rough mock-ups of the puppet. I was getting more and more obsessed. I can't believe it. Now I had assisted in a couple of other Muppets, but this puppet I designed from scratch, and it was based on Leslie Kimmelman's, the woman that wrote, and she pretty much created Julia as a concept and as the character, and then I came and gave her her look. So it was just a tremendous opportunity to sit down and create her. So after I did that work, I mean, the Jim Henson Company kept telling me I was asking them to do things they had never done before. The one aspect that was a bit of a challenge was that they told me that if this character is not going to be, even though she's a Muppet, you know, Elmo, when you see him on the show, he may be doing something, but he'll stop and say, "Oh, hi." I don't do a very good Elmo voice, so I won't even try. But, "Oh, hi," or whoever it is, they'll say, "Hi, welcome to Sesame Street." Julia would never do that. That's not who she is. That's not how she works. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to need somehow to, as soon as you see Julia, I need you to be able to relate to her because she's not going to relate to you directly. So I had an idea. So, you know, if I give her human texture hair, even if it's a fanciful color, the human texture hair will make her feel human. And as soon as you walk in, yeah, there she is. As soon as you come into the screen, you see her, you already feel a bit of a warmth, even though you don't. Because the minute when you design a character, the story is being told the minute you see them. Now, there's more to learn, but the minute you see them, the story has begun. So there was a bit of pushback, because they said, no, she's a Muppet. We don't want to remove her from the Muppet world. We want her to stay within the Muppet family. And I said, yeah, but she's not a regular Muppet. This is something very different. We've never done it before. No one's ever done this before. So I really want to be able to do this so that way when she's not engaging with the audience or the other characters, you still feel a warmth toward her. And it was like, no, we really want her to be in the Muppet world. But eventually I was able to finally convince everyone that this is definitely worth a try. And you'll see a response. I really felt it in my heart. And guess where I got it from? Of course, God anointed me and gave me that idea to give her the human texture hair. And it worked tremendously. And because again, when she doesn't look in the camera, if she just had yarn or maybe like ostrich feathers, and there's a character called Abby Gadabby, it looks like hair, but if you look closer, it's just not ostrich feathers. So, and it looked like Muppets. And I said, no, it can't be yarn or ostrich feathers. It has to be human texture hair. So they found it, they found a wig, and they did, they dyed this artificial hair wig the right color. And it just was a tremendous success. Everyone just loved Julia. And it was wonderful. David, thank you for inviting me to the Sheen Center to do that panel, because it was really wonderful. I had great questions, and I was able to actually share Julia herself with the audience.
It was a pleasure and a privilege of us.
Well, Louis, you've walked us through so much, and anybody right now listening to this and watching this knows, and you just put off this light of who God is and who your Savior is, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing. And so, as a brother of yours, I thank you for that, and it's so neat to see. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, as this is about faith and art and your gifts. What are some scriptures that guide you in your work and your daily life?
Oh yeah, that's key, because of course, like anyone who knows the word is so beautiful and so alive. But there are two in particular that really they just got me so strongly. One is Philippians 2:13, which is maybe I'm not supposed to have a favorite scripture, but this is my favorite scripture of all time. And it's, for it is God who is in you, both to will and to do for his good pleasure. And when I first read it, it was like, wow, that's really cool. But then when I went back and started hearing other ministers teach on it and started to go back and look at what that really means. So, for it is God who is at work in you. So, yeah, God's in me. I know that because once you're born again, you have the Holy Spirit inside you doing. So God is always, you're always in the presence of God. But to will and to do for his good pleasure. So he gives me the desire and the ability. So when I go in to photo shoot, or I sit down to draw, or I come to speak to, these wonderful people watching this video, it's God who's at work in me, both to will and to do for his good pleasure. So I can actually rest. He says in the word to labor to enter into his rest. The labor is to just forget about what I want to do and to say, what? He's the one who's in me, giving me the desire and the ability. So I can sit back on that, because it's been a while now. I never really feel intimidated or anxious about doing any, either it's a live performance. I've spoken in front of many people, or just one-on-one, whether I'm doing a photo shoot. Sometimes I have to pose the characters live. I had to do it in Hollywood one time with all these people watching me. But I'm at rest when I do this work. As a minister I follow, Joseph Prince, he says, rest is not inactivity. Rest is spirit-directed activity. So that goes with that scripture, that is God at work in me, both to will and to do for his good pleasure. So even in the end, I know he's not going to disappoint himself. So he's going to use us and work through us and give us the ability so that he gets the results that he wants. All we have to do is make sure that we set our hands to the work and study and make ourselves available for his use. And the other scripture kind of goes along with it is Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And again, that's what helps me. Whenever I try to do something, I'm not striving to so much to do my best. I'm striving. I can't even say striving. I'm submitting to be able to let him do what he's going to do through me, and do it to the very best of my ability. Do it so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn couldn't do it any better. to actually apply the things that he's brought into my life to think about, to submit to, and to utilize. So that's why let your light so shine before men, whether they are believers or not, they should be able to see that light, and that light is God Himself, and it's Jesus Himself. As a matter of fact, He is the light. So when they see that light, when they see me do whatever it is, and they look at it and say, "Oh man, you love what you do, don't you?" I say, "Yeah, I sure do love what he does." I haven't actually said that yet, but I'm thinking about using it.
That's great. Now, in light of the context that we find ourselves in as a nation, there's a really special picture that you have, and it's with a Sesame Street favorite. It's Ernie, and they have it there. Talk about what that means right now in our world, and how, as a bigger concept, and how that picture came about, even.
Well, again, it's the blessing of the Lord that opened up the door to Sesame Street. I had no idea how to open that door. I didn't have to. He knew how, and He opened it up for me, stepped through there. So years and years go by, and I'm having the time of my life. I do, like you said in the introduction, I do the Macy's Parade balloons, I do the photo shoots, I design new Muppets, I do all this wonderful stuff. The dream came true that I was told would never come true. So don't listen to the naysayers, No, don't hold a grudge about them, but certainly listen to what God has to say and the people that He uses to speak to you. I learned something. This is really precious. The people who don't really believe that you can do something, they're going to try to protect you from your process. But the people that do believe in you, the ones that God will trust you with, are going to protect you through the process. So yeah, there are going to be hardships and things like that, but God's going to lead you through that to teach you the lessons. Iron sharpens iron. You can't avoid the process if you want to get anywhere. So anyway, this was a little nugget that I threw in there. But anyway, so that particular day, I was just thinking about, every time I do a photo shoot, I pray privately on my own. And I step into the studio and I see, the puppets there ready for me, the lights and everything like that. John Barrett, my buddy, waiting to get ready to get started. But in this particular case, I wanted to go back out and kind of prepare myself a little bit more. So anyhow, the young woman that set the puppets up for me, she said, "Louis, Ernie's ready for you." And of course, just hearing that is really cool. Ernie's ready for me. Ernie was my first favorite before Cookie Monster. But so anyway, I went out there and Ernie's on the table. He's armature. You can't see the armature wire, but it comes to the back. So there's a C-stand holding the armature spine, and then all the wires on the inside. And he's just kind of like this, looking down, and his body's kind of contorted in an odd way. It didn't look anything like Ernie. Just put him there for me, because it's really up to me to pose him. It's an act. I call it a still performance. Still meaning that even though they look like they're in action, they're standing still. So I go in there and I look at Ernie, and the first thing I usually do is I grab their heads and I turn his head up, and he looked me in the eye, and I'm telling you, it shot me back to the day I saw Sesame Street for the first time, not knowing what I was looking at. But it just shot me back there, and it's almost like this fast forward flash of all the things that happened from that moment to the moment and this was with the Jim Henson's Muppets. Ernie was one of the ones that he performed. So I said, "Oh my goodness, look what I get to do!" And now there was no one near the camera. This was not meant to be taken a picture of. It's just that it hit me so hard that the dream came true and went far beyond my wildest expectations and hopes. I just wanted to be an artist for Sesame Street, but I got to be, at that point, I was, I think, a character designer, but I wasn't yet the creative director yet. But it didn't matter. My job hasn't really changed that much. It's just, more responsibility, but I'm still doing the things I love to do, which is engaging with the characters, doing the photo shoots. But it just overwhelmed me so much that I just grabbed her and gave her a really big, genuine hug. And like I said, no one was near the camera. John Barrett was preparing for the shoot because I didn't do the pose yet. Usually he'll wait for me to do the pose and then he'll take a few test shots. But I didn't even do that yet. It's just, as soon as he looked at me in my eyes, I just grabbed him. But his assistant, Jeffrey Price, who was like, to me, I didn't know all of John's assistants, but I can't imagine anyone being better than Jeffrey Price. Jeffrey saw what was going on. he has this keen eye. He jumped up and hit the camera plunger just in time because it was a quick little hug, you know. And he got that picture. So that's my favorite picture of me with any Muppet. And it wasn't even meant to be taken. It just symbolizes the gratitude, the passion, the enthusiasm, the overwhelming gratitude that I have to do what I get to do. And it was captured in that moment. So that's the story behind that. You asked me more too, I'm sorry if I cut it short, but that was really how that picture came about.
Yeah, and it was also the context we find ourselves in. And when David and I were talking about things beforehand, it was just a touching moment to think about. And David can share even more about that. That's something we could all just use more of right now, is just the moments where we just go, wow, I just love what I do. You know, I love people. I love what God has given me. And it's just a beautiful portrayal of that you gave us through that picture. And I know, David, Lewis, we could talk for hours about this, and sometimes I wish we could.
Sometimes we do, Jonathan, whenever we get a chance.
Yes. But you know, thank you so much for sharing your heart and some wonderful stories. There's so many more. But more importantly, thank you for using your gifts to honor God. It's something we can all do, and everybody gets to do it. We just get to bring a little spotlight to what you're doing. So thank you, and David, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you in this intriguing conversation.
Oh, well, you know, I couldn't agree more with Jonathan that there probably is no better image than the one we ended with. As they said, pictures speak 1,000 words. That speaks tens of thousands of words. And the word, you know, when the word became flesh, we learned that God is ultimately love. And that image just speaks so much to that idea of love. So I guess in the spirit of Sesame Street, this episode of Sheen Online was brought to you by the letters L-O-V and E. You know, Jim Henson once said that it was his hope to leave the world a little better having been in it. And I think, Lewis, you can clearly check off that box. I certainly know that my day has been better with having shared this short time with you. And thank you for allowing us to see a complete life. And also I want to thank our good friend Jonathan and all our friends at Mastermedia. So thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was a really wonderful opportunity. I just love you guys.
Well, we love you too, and hopefully we'll do this again real soon. And most important,
tomorrow.
There you go. We'll do that Neil Adams series. There you go.
Yes.
And thanks to our viewers. You know, like Sesame Street, the Sheen Center endeavors to be not just a destination, but an aspiration, an inspiration about community, community specifically that builds around faith, hope, and love. But like any community, it takes all the neighbors to build that community. And we can't do it without your help. So in these challenging times, I encourage you to consider making a donation to the Sheen Center. Any gift, no matter how small, makes a huge difference. We ask that you check out all our online content at sheencenter.org. And we invite you next Wednesday, for our next Sheen Online special. Until then, stay safe, be well, God bless.